Please. Now, I wanted to tell a joke, but I'm kind of tired and I'm not sure if it will go out properly. Basically, she's the co-founder of Security Espresso, and come here, Alexandra, come on.
Hello everyone. I want us, because we're tired from an entire day of awesomeness and probably on our third coffee, I want us to do a little bit of sports exercising. So, I want everyone in this room who has their Wi-Fi on right now to stand up. Everyone who has their Wi-Fi on at this exact moment on their mobile phones, I want them to stand up. Stand up. Come on. Stand up. Hotspot counts. Everyone, come on. I don't believe that. I don't believe these two people have their Wi-Fi on. Nobody else? Alright, then I want everyone here to give a big round of applause to these people who have their Wi-Fi on during the Wi-Fi talk at a hacking conference. These brave, brave souls. We're going to take one for the team. Anyway. My name is Alexandra Ștefănescu. As Florina mentioned, I am the co-founder of Security Espresso, so the two people who I thank for the free advertising, and I swear I have not paid, who have mentioned Security Espresso, I'm half of it. The other half is doing actually useful things out at his workplace. I'm also a volunteering developer in Code for Romania, which is a volunteer-based NGO that tries to solve societal problems using technology. We call it civic tech. And it is my firm belief that I am not allowed to bitch and moan about how people have poor security practices and about how everyone falls for fake news and about how they aren't well informed without me actually doing anything about it. So, in the most cynical of sense, my volunteering work awards me the possibility to bitch and moan. Right? So that's how that happened. And I'm also now a security software engineer at UiPath. So, this is probably something that you recognize as a bunch of devices that probably have Wi-Fi on, right? So we have a router, which is the pink thingy, we have mobile phones, which are the blue thingies, and then smartwatches, they have Wi-Fi. That's not exactly surprising by now, right? However, this isn't the entire Wi-Fi landscape. There's more to it than this. Yeah, light bulbs have Wi-Fi. People have sat around in the dark at night because their light bulbs were getting a firmware update over Wi-Fi. This is a thing now. Coffee makers have Wi-Fi. Sniper rifles have Wi-Fi. There was an attack on a sniper rifle during a shooting exercise where somebody hacked the rifle using the default password provided by the vendor in the documentation in order to change the weight of the bullets. So they couldn't influence the trajectory, they couldn't pull the trigger, but they could convince the rifle that the bullet was 1 ton heavy. And this worked, because Wi-Fi, right? And autonomous cars have Wi-Fi. The good news is that after we've seen the several screw-ups in the industry where the brake system of cars was taken out while they were driving on the road, the industry learned. And now the GPS runs Wi-Fi, the infomedia system runs Wi-Fi, but none of the actually important mechanical parts in the car are connected to the system. However, you would be amazed how much you can achieve when the infotainment system and the GPS of the car run Wi-Fi. Right, so I'm going to use a few technical terms during this talk, and I want us all to be clear on the naming of stuff. So that there is a device. It doesn't matter if it's a phone, you can picture a car instead of a phone, or a sniper rifle instead of the phone. It's still a device, right? When I say SSID, I mean the name of the network that you might be connecting to. They appear in the networks pane in your phone when you click Wi-Fi, and when you want to connect to one of them, you click on one of those names. Those names can be changed. They are only about 30 characters long, so there are restrictions to how you can name your network, and there are certain characters which aren't accepted as part of a SSID name. Now, here comes the interesting part. Every device has a MAC address. A MAC is an identifier that is baked into the hardware, more or less. Every hardware comes with a MAC, but that doesn't mean that the MAC that your phone was born with is the MAC that you still have on it right now. You can change it, you can alter it, and you can take on somebody else's MAC address. But more or less, for Wi-Fi, you have one MAC address. And by the way, for Bluetooth, you have another MAC address. The networks also have a MAC address. So each router has one or more MAC addresses, and they are, again, more or less unique. So let's recap. Your device has a unique identifier. The network they connect to has a unique identifier. So if a device pairs to a network, this marriage made in heaven is unique, which means that it is trackable. I can tell what connections are active in this room right now based on the assumption that none of you have the MAC of another person, and based on the fact that the router has one or more MAC addresses that do not change. If we abide by these assumptions, we can track every single device paired to every single network, right? Which is interesting because we do. So here's the scary thing about Wi-Fi. And after you learn this, I want you to engage in full-blown paranoia because it's adequate. It is the source of many of the attacks that I'm going to describe further. And it is also the source of a lot of the fun that I've been having lately with Wi-Fi. With Wi-Fi, everyone can hear everyone else talk. Everything on Wi-Fi is radio. Everything in radio is interceptable because right now, if I had a radio right here, I could tune in to several radio stations. I could tune into Rock FM, I could tune into DGFM, right? There's nothing prohibiting me, nothing is gonna turn off the radio and say, no, you aren't allowed in Rock FM. You're wearing pink, right? It's not gonna happen. So the same is true for Wi-Fi. If I want to, I can hear all of the conversations happening in this room right now, and I can store them, and I can track them, and I can alter them. Why? Because everyone can hear everyone else on Wi-Fi. By the way, this is not in fact true for Ethernet. So when you have your cable plugged into your computer, this does not longer hold true. That is part of why Ruxandra was mentioning earlier that GPS communications and Wi-Fi are both striving for wired-like security. We want to be as secure as that cable plugged into your laptop, but the truth is we aren't. And the more cynical truth is we probably won't ever be. Just saying. Bluetooth is part of this sad bunch, by the way. And all of the Bluetooth-like things, like Zigbee and whatever they're named right now. So, let's start on our Wi-Fi journey with the leakage. So this is a router. A router's job is to get income connections. But how do the devices know that a router exists? Well, the router very helpfully says, hello, I am this network. In this case, my home network, right? Every router, if we had several in this room, would say, hey, I am my home network. But not only once, so it's not just when you plug it in, it says once and then it goes dead. No, it says this continuously. So if we were to bring out a sniffer right now, every single router in here would be continuously advertising the networks, the SSIDs, that it has programmed on it, right? But it gets better. Devices also ask for the networks that they have previously connected to. And not just once, they ask continuously, which is really helpful because, see, in Wi-Fi there are several channels. The rule is if I'm on one channel, I can't hear anyone on another channel. But hopping from one channel to another is really cheap in terms of hardware, and it's really fast. And it's really good that all the devices and all the routers are continuously advertising all of the connections they've made, because that means I can hop to every single channel and listen to every single advertisement, which makes leakage really easy. And keep in mind that all of these networks that this device connected to are unique connections. So it has a MAC, those networks have a MAC, and I can store all of these as a unique fingerprint of their smartphone, which could be a car or a sniper rifle. Income Wiggle. Wiggle is a website that has been around for a long, long time, And what it does is it provides a platform to store and an app to sniff unique SSIDs or networks. So if you walk around town with Wiggle on your smartphone, and by the way, the smartphone can be as dumb. You can take out all of those 3 crappy smartphones you've had lying around that you're no longer using because their cameras aren't good enough or their screen broke, and put Wiggle on them and keep it on and the GPS on and Wi-Fi on at all times, and you will sniff most networks that you go past. I'm saying most, not all, because remember, you have to hop channels all the time, and if you aren't on the channel when someone is saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, then you've missed it. But that's the only restriction. Otherwise, as good as your sensitivity is on your Wi-Fi antenna, you can sniff the name of all networks in your vicinity all the time. And there are no restrictions. No one can stop you from doing it. Well, actually, in due honesty, someone can stop you from doing it, and that is the GDPR legislation. Here, I'm going to say a small addendum. Everything I've done in preparation for this talk has been purely in the name of research. So, serious face. Anyway, everything I've done is purely in the name of research. So I haven't harmed anyone or tracked anyone or even pranked anyone with the data I've collected. So I'm hoping the gods of GDPR will smile nicely on me and have mercy, because MAC addresses are personal data under GDPR. They're unique identifiers of you and you and you, so they're protected by GDPR. You are not allowed, in fact, to sniff data with Wiggle in the European Union. But if you don't harm anyone, I mean, how bad can it be? So anyway, this is the mobile app. That yellow button up there that says upload, if you install Wiggle, make sure to click that from time to time. That's all you have to do. That's all the maintenance that Wiggle needs. From time to time, you bring up that crappy smartphone that your aunt gave you because the screen cracked, and you press upload my data to Wiggle, and you're good. You've sniffed a few networks for that day. Actually, there's more to it. Wiggle exposes the database of all networks, sniffed all across time, everywhere. Except you only have a few requests per day, even if you're a registered user, so that you don't DDoS their servers. And if you find your network on there, and you are sure that it's yours, as in the GPS location is your house, you can ask them nicely in an email to kindly take it out, and they will kindly take it out. They're really nice people. So yeah, that's Wiggle. Keep in mind, Wiggle only registers the network names. So if I started Wiggle right now, which I might or might not be doing, I wouldn't hear anything about y'all unless, as Lucian said, you're running a hotspot. Again, he's a brave soul. In comes Kismet. Kismet is a piece of software. It runs really, really, really well on Linux, and it kind of works on macOS and Windows. It works with some caveats. The thing about Kismet is that you can see everything, all the things. It's really, really good, really comprehensive. It also can work with any Wi-Fi card. So even the Wi-Fi card that's in your laptop when you bought the laptop, that also works. But external Wi-Fi cards work even better because they're more powerful and the antenna is longer. By the way, longer isn't always better. We can talk about this afterwards. So yeah, if you want to run Kismet, spin up a Linux VM, tell it where your Wi-Fi card is, and it will just work. Now, Kismet can listen to both network names and device names. But this isn't all of it. Kismet can learn about hidden networks, and we'll talk about this later. And this still isn't all of it. Kismet is also an intrusion detection system. And one of those words might have caught your attention. What do you mean intrusion detection system? And here we come to the pwnage. The reason why we speak of intrusion is because attacks on Wi-Fi are cheap, easy, and fun. It's really hard to prohibit something when it's fun. If it were boring, nobody would do it, but it's fun. So, here's how this happens. If my device says, hey, is my home network here? And the router very kindly replies, yep, I'm my home network. Then what's to stop an attacker from saying the same, right? And this is called the karma attack. The karma attack works by listening to nearby devices, listening to what networks they're asking for, and then just responding as one of those networks. I mean, what's to stop me from saying, yes, I'm KFC open, and McDonald's open, and autopen free Wi-Fi, and everything you've ever connected to. You connect to me, so what can I do in this scenario? I can give you a fake page for a shop that you might want to browse, and when you don't pay attention and log in really quickly because you want to delay this order because you won't be at home, you're giving me your credentials. Because I control where your network traffic goes because you've connected to me, the fake hotspot or the fake device, instead of to the real router, right? So this is the karma attack. This is a more specialized version of something called the evil twin attack, which is a lot more lazy and it just uses some common names. It doesn't listen for what you're broadcasting. Now let's go forward with this. Let's say the router tells me, the device, hey, can you leave my network? You can reconnect later, but can you just go away for a few seconds? And my device will say, sure, why not? I mean, I'll just come back later. So everyone can hear this. Everyone can hear this conversation. And by the way, this is important. Even if you connect to a secure hotspot, this isn't clear. All of these so-called management frames that the router sends in order to orchestrate the conversation between it and all the devices are unclear. And it's not because the vendors are lazy, and it's not because the governments are lazy. This is the Wi-Fi protocol. This is how the protocol works. They're mandated to be in the clear. If they weren't, that would break Wi-Fi. So, coming back to our attack, everyone can hear you leave in Wi-Fi. So what's to stop me, as an attacker, from making a device leave, right? I'm pretending to be an AP and telling a device, hey, can you go away for a few seconds? And it's gonna say, sure. And here's the fun part. Most device vendors, so people who make your smartphones, have worked out a rule saying, look, if the router's dying and it's really crappy and it can't sustain traffic anymore, if it's telling you go away 5 or 7 times in a row, just don't reconnect. Just don't. It's probably dying. Somebody's probably installing an update. Somebody probably DDoSed it. Don't connect anymore. Just find another network to connect to, which is smart because connecting takes a lot of battery the more you do it. And so devices are protected by this mechanism of not reconnecting if they're being deauthenticated about 5 or 7 times in a row, right? That's smart thinking. Except if I do this, I can force a device to pick another network name to connect to, right? I can deauth it from the legitimate server, let's say like my work router, and force it to pick another network to connect to. And it might connect to a network that I'm broadcasting, that I'm impersonating, right? So this is useful. And I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, look, I'm not a stupid person. I know security, right? I've come to this conference, of course I know security. I use a hidden network, how about that? Yeah? Nobody can hear my network, it's hidden. It doesn't even need a password. It's hidden. Nobody can see it. Why does it need a password if nobody can see it, right? And let's say there are even some smarter than that who say, not only is it hidden, it also has a password. That's how good I am. Except you're not. How do you think a device connects to a hidden network? Because it's going to say, hey, is my hidden home network here? And what do you think the router is going to do?
Yes.
Here I am.
Yeah, that's just great. I mean, I just heard the name of this hidden network. The moment I hear its name, I know all the information I want about it, and I can now impersonate it. That is why Kissmet and other pieces of software can detect hidden networks. Again, this is not vendors being lazy. This is how Wi-Fi works. And just as Ruxandra was saying earlier, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of reading time to go through these specs and try to work out a better solution. Right. But you're even smarter than that. I know. I'm preaching to the choir. You're going to say, yeah, but look, I know security. I've come to a security conference. I have a WPA2 protected network in my house with a really long password. It's this long, right? Because, longer is better, except for antennas. I'm never going to be hacked, right? Wrong. Let's consider the case of WPA2, the enterprise version. So this is something that you might have in your workplace, right? A device says, hey, I want to connect. The router says, sure. The device says, here's my username and password, and the router says, they're correct. Come on board. Except, what's to stop me from doing this? I say, I want to connect, and the attacker says, sure. And then it says, I want to connect to the legitimate router. And the router says, sure. Then my device says, this is my username and password. And the attacker takes them and turns around and tells the legitimate network, here's my username and password. And the legitimate network is going to say, yeah, that's correct. And then the attacker turns around and says, yeah, that's correct, you're now connected. So the device thinks it's connected to a legitimate WPA2 Enterprise protected server, except there's an attacker in the middle. And this is actually the setup for a much longer attack, but it was so much fun that I just wanted to walk you through it because it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. It's like the best prank in the world. But we're not done yet, because, by the way, WPA2 can be cracked, and so can web, but you already knew that, because you're smart people. You're at a security conference, so yeah. WPA2 can be cracked, but you need an initial set of words that it needs to try out, but it's kind of really easy, and those lists already exist in the usual place that you might find lists for cracking. I'm sure you all know where that is. So yeah, it's not that good. All right. So how are you feeling so far with your confidence in using Wi-Fi? I want some impromptu reactions while I quickly take a sip of water and obscure the projector entirely. That's great, thanks. All right, so for all of you who have seen the fun in this, because by the way, it's fun, right? It's fun. These are some tools that you can try out. So you can use single path for the EAP relay, which was that entire scenario of the attacker impersonating as the real router. That is called an EAP relay. And WPA2 single path is a tool that automates that entire process. You don't even need to do anything. You just run it and wait. Aside from that, for doing man-in-the-middle attacks, there's BetterCap, and that URL in green is a place where all of these are gathered up for your convenience. On that website, by the way, you can also find some VMs in which you can practice Wi-Fi hacking without even needing a Wi-Fi antenna. They're simulated, they are on somebody else's computer, by which I mean a server, so it's safe to practice there. I highly recommend it, and this is probably the most useful slide out of my entire slide deck, because I don't put words on my slides, you might have noticed. So if you get the slides, just skip to this one. Oh, and by the way, don't break anything that's not yours, please. Right, let's get to the silliness part of my talk, because this is fun, right? This is fun. I was walking around one day with Wiggle, and I got tired, and I sat down on a bench in a churchyard. Because there are a lot of churches in Romania. Wherever you go, you're going to stumble on a church. So I was sitting in a churchyard, and I thought, I wonder what networks they have in a church. I mean, I'm a curious person. So I turned on Wiggle, and this is what I heard. For those of you who don't understand those words, this church has a network advertising the fact that it can sell very hard Romanian beverages, alcoholic beverages. Suica. So this is extremely useful information right here.
May I share it?
Sure. But wait, it gets better, I promise. So I called a friend and told him about this anecdote, and he went like, so did you go and ask about the Suica? No, because they didn't leave a number, I didn't know who to ask about it. I wasn't go over and ask the priest, excuse me, I heard you had some Suica lying around, that was nice. And he said, did you check the MAC address? Because I told you MAC addresses can be edited, and they are long enough to fit in an entire mobile phone number. So what if at that point I would just check in the Wiggle database and find that? I would feel so stupid. And I would think they were so brilliant, but sadly no, that's not true. That's the MAC address of the Bundesliga network is. But it would have been brilliant if they had hidden the number in the MAC address. Brilliant. Okay, so on one of the first slides I said I spiritually identify as a cat, which is why I don't use map pins, I use cat paws, and I exported my entire Wiggle database, and these are SSIDs in Bucharest in this immediate area where I found networks named as cats. So like names for tomcat and kitten and cat house and so on in Romanian and English. I thought it was adorable. There are several of them. It warmed up my heart. And this, by the way, this is a really beautiful map. I don't know whether you've noticed, it's beautiful. It makes your heart sing just looking at it. And I'm saying this because Wiggle offers a service to see the pins on the map, and it looks ugly. I just don't want to use it. It's like something that Windows 95 didn't want. So I've made it my personal mission to make a new service for exporting the Wiggle database and putting pins on the map that actually makes sense and that actually looks pretty, with pretty pins and a really nicely drawn map. And by the way, at the back of this, there's OpenStreetMap, which is the open source map service thing, as opposed to Google Maps, which is not open source and evil. Sorry for saying so. So this is wholesome, beautiful, and I want to make more of this because it's pretty nice. And now going forward, I have a puzzle for you. This is Unirii Square here in Bucharest, and those are some SSIDs just lying around in Unirii Square. What do you think that name is? There are a lot of them, but they haven't all been observed at the exact same time. So what do you think that says?
Shawarma?
So we have shawarma. I want 4 more options. McDonald's, another one. Cats, another one. Dâmbovița, come on, one last one. Unirii. The Unirii one was closest, but it's actually this. Again, for those of you who can't read Romanian, and good for you, that is the SSID of a water fountain. Why does a water fountain have an SSID? Tell me.
It's on a show.
Maybe, but like
The
there's...
pumps, the pumps from the water, the regulator, for a light show.
Yeah, I know there's a pretty light show, especially last year they made a pretty light show of those water fountains, but why Wi-Fi? I mean, couldn't they just program a light show and leave it at that? There's no reason for Wi-Fi. Actually, in all the honesty, somebody gave me a really good reason for this. Maybe they're open hotspots.
No, Alexandra, actually they want foreigners to live stream the show.
So they want foreigners to live stream the light show from the water fountains, so they put Wi-Fi on the water fountains to make foreigners stick around. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I think it's brilliant.
You could, in Barcelona, they have this musical, they may want in the future to change the performance.
So I think these are all great ideas, like changing the performance, changing the lights, streaming from that location because you have free Wi-Fi, but the very idea of Wi-Fi existing in a water fountain just rubs me in all the wrong places. So anyway, that was my talk. Thank you for your attention. And any questions?
Actually, I have a paper. Can you put some dog bones too on the
Sure.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions?
Could you go back a slide?
Yeah. Can I do this? Oh. It's fortunately it's the same name, so it's really easy. Any other questions?
I'm interested. Of your intention. Why choosing this subject?
So when I first entered the workforce, I actually entered it in a networking company working for a Wi-Fi testing team. And please imagine this, I was in my 3rd year of college. I barely knew shit about programming. I entered a networking testing firm in the Wi-Fi department, where Wi-Fi, by the way, in case you didn't know, does not have an RFC. All of the standardization is not public, and I had to read through all of those hundreds of pages of documentation in order to understand how the Wi-Fi works. So because of the grueling work that I had to do during my internship just to understand what the thing was, it kind of grew on me because, you know, Stockholm Syndrome works like that. And ever since it grew on me, I was continuously interested in what was happening. And actually a funny story, thank you for asking me about this, is that back when I worked for this team, this was true that all devices continuously asked, is this network that I previously connected to here? This isn't true anymore, which is good and bad, because it's not true because the vendors looked at the attacks happening in the real world and said, wow, this is unfortunate, yeah, we should do something about this, sure, yeah. But they didn't coordinate because, you know, why talk to the person next to you? They didn't coordinate, and each of them had their very own idea about how to solve this problem. Which means that, right now, in real life, we have old devices which are still broadcasting continuously. We have newer devices, out of which some chose to not broadcast and forced the routers to broadcast more. Which means that if you make a hotspot on one phone and try to connect to it from another phone, let's say, I never said that. It will take a crap load of time to connect to the hotspot right here with the phone right there. Why? Because the phone that wants to connect to the hotspot is no longer asking for the name, it's waiting for the hotspot to be nice enough to announce that it exists, which means it now takes longer to connect to networks, which is not good because Wi-Fi is sometimes used for voice calls. You don't want to have a minute drop in your Skype conference call with your investors for your unicorn because some companies adopted a solution that isn't ideal to your use case, right? So every vendor came up with their own idea of how to solve this. Each of them have varying approaches, which led to a more fragmented ecosystem, which means it's harder for researchers to even begin to understand what's happening because, again, the standard isn't public. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra, for an awesome presentation as always. Our next speaker has a PhD in computer science and she has a wide experience in solution security assessments on various projects.